The Jets go on the road to Denver and get their fourth straight win. However, they do suffer a number of key injuries. We'll talk about all the good and all the bad of this victory today on the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Monday, October 24th, 2022, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. This podcast is free, and it's available on all platforms, including YouTube. If you like what you see or hear, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening. You'll never miss an episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps the channel out, and it helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. The Jets did it again. They got their fourth straight victory yesterday. They beat the Denver Broncos on the road 16-9. The Jets are 4-0 on the road this season. Jets have been phenomenal away from MetLife Stadium. A year after they really struggled on the road. Last year, in fact, they only won one road game. They only beat the Houston. It was against the Houston Texans. It was against a team that wasn't very good. This year, the Jets, I don't want to say unbeatable, but the Jets have been playing very well on the road. And yesterday was a big milestone victory because with the victory, the Jets have guaranteed that they will finish the 2022 season with more wins than they had in 2021. And we're only 7 games into the season. We are not even halfway through the season yet, and the Jets have already increased their win total. You just see the progress continuing to move forward with this franchise. And Jets now 5-2. There are no teams in the AFC currently that have more than 5 wins. And the only other teams that have 5 wins in the AFC, Buffalo and Kansas City. Now, who saw that coming? In fact, Buffalo is the only team right now in the AFC that has a better record than the New York Jets. Who saw that coming at the beginning of the season? It's been an amazing ride so far through the first 7 weeks for the Jets. Now, yesterday's game, you may have been better served if you just saw the final score, because it was not a pretty game to watch, and many Jets fans were frustrated. They said the Jets won ugly. Well, first of all, if you're a Jets fan, there's no such thing as winning ugly after the last 12 years. You take wins any way you can get them. But, heading into this game, all signs were that was how it was going to play out. These offenses are pretty limited. You knew with Denver, you were either getting a Russell Wilson, who, first of all, is not playing well, and a compromised Russell Wilson, because if he had played yesterday, he would have been injured. You were either getting that, an offense, a very limited Denver offense, or you were getting what you actually got, which was no Russell Wilson and Brett Rippon in the lineup. And Brett Rippon himself is an even more limited quarterback. I saw, some people were, I noticed there were some people who were a little bit worried because Russell Wilson was not playing well. Was it a case where he'd leave the lineup and Denver would suddenly improve? The answer is no. I mean, listen, even a compromised Russell Wilson, even a declining Russell Wilson is probably better than Brett Rippon. And you have a Jets defense that's been playing really well. So you knew it would be low scoring on that side of the ball. On offense, the Jets offense right now is limited. They're not getting much out of their passing game. You already went into the game without Elijah Moore, so you knew that Jets were down a receiver to begin the game. They suffered some injuries throughout the contest. We know the offensive line, even though it had played well the last couple weeks, has been a work in progress. Zach Wilson, at this point in his career, I think you'd have to say he still looks very raw as a quarterback working in the pocket. He's struggling to read defenses. His accuracy is not spectacular at this point. His pocket presence is kind of lacking. He's raw. He's a second-year quarterback who's still quite raw. And Denver has an excellent pass defense. They have a very good pass rushing, very, very good group of pass rushers. They had a great cover corner, Patrick Surtain. It was just going to be tough. And the game was pretty much going to play out. Though I was expecting this game played out. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes these games play out completely differently from how I was expecting. This was how I was expecting the game to play out. I felt like It was probably a game the Jets should win, especially with Brett Rippon in there. I knew it was not going to look aesthetically pleasing. I knew that there was not going to be a lot of offense. Essentially what you hoped for was that you got just enough from the Jets offense, and the defense maybe made one big play, maybe one turnover that gives you the ball in plus position, help you steal some points. You hope your special teams play well. And that's really what the Jets got in this game. It was a low-scoring game through the first half. And during the first half, there were moments where I was concerned because the first 26 minutes of this game, it wasn't just that the Jets offense was not sustaining drives. Denver was. And to the Jets defense's credit, I mean, they were not giving up a lot of points. They only gave up 9 points in the entire game. But they were allowing the Broncos to move the ball, which first of all, gives you a field position advantage. But second of all, if Denver's holding the ball, you worry about where things are going to be in the fourth quarter. Because if the Jets defense is on the field a lot in the earliest part of the game, is everybody going to be exhausted by the time the fourth quarter runs around? Will they be completely out of gas? And normally that stuff doesn't matter that much, but you're in Denver, you're in the thin air, you've got players who are not acclimated to that climate, so you don't want them to be exhausted in the fourth quarter. And 26 minutes into the game, Denver had a 19-minute to 7-minute lead in time of possession. There was a point where the Broncos had run 39 plays to the Jets' 15. Again, this was the first 26 minutes of the game. So there was some concern there. And even the big play the Jets made in the first 26 minutes, a Breece Hall 65-yard touchdown, it was great. I mean, it was spectacular, but also means the Jets' defense is going right back on the field after they have the ball. So, Jets really were not able to sustain drives in the first half until the very end. It was a game that was going back and forth. Jets got that big touchdown run from Breece Hall, and that was another part of the formula that you needed. Unfortunately, Hall left with an injury, an apparent knee injury later in the first half. Unfortunately, the Jets defense was not, they were not playing great. I mean, they allowed the Broncos to go right down the field, a 13-play touchdown drive to cut the score to 7-6. They allowed an 8-play touchdown drive that got the Broncos into field goal range. Brandon McManus missed a field goal, and McManus missed a field goal after missing an extra point on Denver's first touchdown. Then the Jets allowed another 11-play drive. This one resulted in a field goal. It was 9-7. It felt like the Broncos were starting to get control of the game. Then at the end of the first half, the Jets put together maybe their best drive of the game. And they resulted in a field goal by Greg Zuerlein at the end of the half, gave the Jets a 10-9 lead heading to the locker room. And the Jets never trailed again. Zuerlein was good from 45 yards out on a day where all accounts were it was tough to kick because it was windy, and maybe that contributed to McManus's struggles. You could see the ball was making some weird, when the balls were being kicked, they were making some very weird movements. I mean, Zuerlein actually almost missed the extra point on the first on the touchdown the Jets scored. So it was a tough day to kick. So credit to Greg Zuerlein because he was 3 for 3 in this game. But on that touchdown drive, on that field goal drive right before the half, the two key plays were Zach Wilson had a great scramble on a 3rd and 8 play. He picked up 18 yards. He essentially made a guy miss in the open field. And, there's always the debate because he got injured in that preseason game. Should Zach be trying to make guys miss? And the answer, I think, is generally no. But on a 3rd down play right before the half, that's the point where maybe you pick your spot. He made a great juke in the open field and was able to deliver. Then the Jets got into some trouble. They took a couple of they took a couple of penalties, and on a 1st and 25, Zach Wilson hit Michael Carter over the middle, and Carter just took the ball up the field. He got it over the middle. He took it up the left sideline for a 37-yard gain. That's what put the Jets into scoring range. Then there were this third quarter was essentially a punt fest. Nobody was really generating anything. Jets defense finally started stepping up. They started forcing punts. Even though they weren't giving up points in the first half, they were allowing the Broncos to sustain drives. That ended in the second half. The Jets defense was dominant in the second half. Some excellent performances on that side of the ball. And then the key play near the end of the third quarter, Quinnen Williams got a pressure on Brett Rippon, forced a bad throw that LaMarcus Joyner picked off, and he had a nice run back. He actually ran the ball back to the Denver 37. The Jets were able to move the ball about 20 yards to give Zuerlein a chip shot field goal to make it a 13-9 game. Then the Jets were able to add another field goal later on. They put together a 10-play drive, and they were able to give Zuerlein another field goal to boost their lead to 7. And they got a couple stops. They got a couple of key stops at the end of the game. The decisive play was a 4th down play with just under 2 minutes left. Brett Rippon tested Sauce Gardner. He went for Cortland Sutton. Sauce Gardner held up. Now, there was some contact on that play. I'm sure Denver fans wanted flags. And the officials, I thought, were really shaky in this game. I thought the Jets did not get some calls that they probably should have gotten. I mean, 99 from Denver was like a wrestling player. He was like a wrestler, professional wrestler, like diving on guys after plays ended. There were some shaky calls on both sides. That was one, I don't know if it was a penalty. I think it could have been called, so Sauce got away. Maybe, I don't know if I'd say Sauce got away with one. It was a little, it was a little bang bang. I think either way, it would have been difficult to complain. I'm sure Denver fans are going crazy about it. But Sauce held up, and he made the play on Cortland Sutton. Then Denver had a desperation drive. The Jets actually had an interception that was taken off on a review, which I still can't understand. But they stood up again. Sauce again on the decisive fourth down play stood up. I mean, Sauce Gardner's a guy who's tough to challenge this year. And the Jets had their fourth straight win, fifth win of the season. The news was not all good, however. Unfortunately, the Jets suffered a number of key injuries in this game. And as we continue on this Monday recap of Locked On Jets, we'll talk about the players who got hurt, and we'll talk about the potential implications for this team. It's always great when the Jets win, always great to do a recap episode, and this recap episode is brought to you by Prediction Strike, the world's first sports stock market. You can now invest in professional athletes just like stocks. It's a lower risk alternative to sports betting, and athlete prices move based on performance and supply and demand. So if you bought Sauce Gardner a few months ago, you've seen his value shoot up. There are 2.5% trade fees. It's the lowest in real money sports. You can invest in 4 sports, not just the NFL, but also in baseball, the NBA, and UFC. So download the Prediction Stripe app and use code LOCKED for a free share when you sign up and get a first deposit of $20 or more. That's promo code LOCKED for a special one-time giveaway. Prediction Strike will choose one person who signs up with the code LOCKED and makes a deposit to win 100 free random shares. That could be worth up to $3,000 if you get lucky and receive Josh Allen shares. Maybe conflicted if you're a Jets fan getting Josh Allen shares, but certainly appreciate the money you can make. Invest in what you know on Prediction Strike, the stock market for sports. Jets are playing great this year. Second best record in the AFC. I'm still not sure whether they're at a point where they're going to be contending for a championship ring, but things are definitely looking up. And if you need to get a ring yourself, whether you're looking to pop the question, have a milestone to celebrate, or you want to let your love sparkle, BlueNile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. As the original online jeweler, BlueNile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. BlueNile has helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring. Their easy online tools help you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. BlueNile's bench of jewelers will help you handcraft her perfect one-of-a-kind engagement ring. And if you're looking for a fine piece of jewelry to commemorate a special occasion but still are having trouble choosing, BlueNile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with BlueNile. Go to BlueNile.com and use code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BLUENILE.com/LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com, code LOCKEDON. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Jets your first listen every day. And for your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Today we are recapping a Jets victory, 16-9 over the Denver Broncos. Yeah, I mentioned it at the top. I've come across some Jets fans who are disappointed in their performance yesterday. I'm sorry. I can't get over Jets fans after 4 wins last year, 2 wins the year before, no playoffs since 2010. We're not at the point where we could be complaining about how victories look. A win is a win. And this was the type of win you kind of had to see it coming. You knew it was going to be a defensive struggle. The offenses may have trouble operating. Jets were already down Elijah Moore. Unfortunately, during the game, they also lost 3 other starters on offense, and all of them are important. You got Breece Hall, you got Elijah Vera Tucker, and you've got Corey Davis, who all left the game and did not return. Unfortunately, and we'll see what happens today and tomorrow, we'll find out more news as greater tests are taken. The early reports are not good on Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker. Things seem a little bit more optimistic on Corey Davis. I heard after the game it was said that he could have returned if the Jets felt like they needed him. But Vera Tucker and Breece Hall, we'll just hope. We'll just hope that the initial reports are wrong. Breece Hall, to me, is the biggest loss. Vera Tucker's huge too, but Breece Hall would be the biggest loss if the Jets lost him, because over the last 3 weeks, it's not just that he's the best player. He's become the offense. It's just give the ball to Breece Hall, and he can make big plays for you. He opened the scoring in this game with that 65-yard touchdown run. He's a playmaker waiting to happen, and especially the last couple of weeks where the Jets have really struggled throwing the football. And there are lots of reasons they've struggled throwing the football, but the Jets have really struggled. It's nice to have something to turn to on the offense and know that you can get results. And that's what's happening with Breece Hall. And even on plays that aren't really blocked that well, he's still figuring out how to turn them into productive plays. He's got that playmaking ability. He's got that speed. I mean, that touchdown run, I mean, the Jets blocked it great, but he's the guy that finished it. And I feel like for running backs, what you're really paying for is not the first 7 to 10. You're paying for yards 11 and beyond. You're not paying for the first 10 yards because generally speaking, and I think Breece Hall is even an exception because he's still doing well on plays that aren't blocked that well. But when a running back can add surplus value past 10 yards, and he ran away from that defense yesterday, that's really where you got something working. The guy who's made Zach Wilson's life easier. He's been the focal point of the offense the last 3 weeks. After week 2, I think we all thought it was going to be Garrett Wilson because he had that monster game against Cleveland. Well, Garrett Wilson's been struggling lately. And part of it's he's been going up against some really great corners, Jair Alexander, Patrick Surtain yesterday. But these guys have also held him in check. And if you're going to be a number one guy in this league, you got to win some of those elite matchups. And I don't know that Garrett Wilson's doing it. And it's not a knock on Garrett Wilson. He's still a rookie. He's still in the first half of his first season. But it's clear that Breece Hall has become the guy on offense for the Jets. And this would be a huge loss. And I know some people are going to say, well, Michael Carter's a good back. And you're right. If you have to suffer an injury at the running back position, Michael Carter's a good backup option. I'm not saying he's not, but he's not Breece Hall. Michael Carter's a good back. Breece Hall has become the Jets' entire offense. So it would be a really tough loss for the Jets because this guy has become, and I don't think Michael Carter's got the big playability of Breece Hall. I think Michael Carter's, he's a tough runner between the tackles and grind out some tough yardage, but he's not Breece Hall. And Vera Tucker, I mean, what can you say about Elijah Vera Tucker? To me, this is like a little bit less bad because, frankly, the offensive line's been a revolving door anyway. So it's like we know how to reconfigure the offensive line, but Vera Tucker's been so valuable, playing 3 different positions, none of which were the position he played last year, by the way. So he's essentially been learning new positions I know he's played tackle in college. I know the move from left guard to right guard is not that big of a deal, but Vera Tucker's been solid for the Jets. In a year where they've had to rotate guys in and out, he's been the source of stability. And, this offensive line, it's been very up and down. It felt like, even though Dwayne Brown had a really bad game yesterday, it felt like Vera Tucker's been a guy who's been a great source of stability. He's really helped this offensive line weather some of these injuries. You hope he's okay. It's an elbow injury. What makes me scared, and I shouldn't be speculating on this, but the fact it's an elbow injury, which is not like it's not a lower body injury to like a leg or something like that, usually going to take you out. If it's an upper body injury and you have to leave the game, I mean, that's a kind of a scary situation. So, perhaps Elijah Vera Tucker, we hope the Jets haven't lost him for a long time. But also Corey Davis. Corey Davis left the game with an injury. The initial prognosis on him was at least a little bit better. And this was tough in part because the Jets were already down Elijah Moore because of everything that happened last week. And this shows you, I said it on Friday, and now it's even more true. The Jets and Elijah Moore may not like each other right now, but they need each other. Elijah Moore, can't do anything if the Jets don't want to play him. They can't force the Jets to trade him. And for the Jets, well, now you're potentially down Breece Hall, you're potentially down Elijah Vera Tucker. And while these guys may play different positions, you might need to compensate elsewhere. You might just need better receiver play to compensate for a downgrade at running back, a downgrade on the offensive line. And Corey Davis, I mean, you can't be, once the Jets start losing 2 receivers, this becomes very difficult. Becomes a difficult spot. And, winning in the NFL, a lot of it comes down to just opportunities that come your way. And a lot has been made of the Jets playing 4 backup quarterbacks this year. Where you win in the NFL is when you get good breaks and you take advantage of them. And the Jets have gotten good breaks this year with the quarterbacks they faced. And to their credit, they've taken advantage of them. They've taken care of business. Unfortunately, these injuries, these are bad breaks. And the other issue is that one injury, makes each additional injury tougher to overcome because it's one thing to have to compensate for losing a running back. It's one thing to have to compensate for losing a tackle. It's another to have to compensate for losing a receiver. But when all of these happen at once, there's kind of a snowball effect. So, again, we'll wait and see. But this could, I hate to say this could be a costly loss for the Jets. But if you're going to be upset about what happened, and I think that this does put a little bit of a damper over this game. It's not that the Jets, won ugly. It's that they lost some key players, and hopefully these guys will be back. And if these injuries are not as bad as reported, then we've got a lot to smile about. And we still have a lot to look. The Jets are still 5-2, and they're still in a position where they just need to go 500 the rest of the way, and they'll get to 10 wins. But it'll be a tougher road without these guys. And I think part of the story of this game is, number one, the Jets won, but number two, they did suffer some injuries that could have an impact on this team moving forward. But as we close out this episode of Locked On Jets, I want to finish on a positive note, and I have to talk about the defense. Another excellent performance by the defense. Shook off kind of a shaky start, but they eventually heated up in the second half and helped the Jets deliver a victory. And we'll talk about them as we close out this Monday episode of Locked On Jets. Well, I don't know if you're a daily fantasy player, but this year the Jets actually have some guys who could help you out. We hope Breece Hall's injury is not serious because he's been stellar. And if you are a daily fantasy player, let me tell you about PrizePicks. Here's how it works. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you watch. So if you're too nervous to pick Jets opponents, you can go to the NBA, you can go to Major League Baseball, you can go to the NHL, college football. A couple of weeks we'll have men's college and women's college basketball, and disc golf. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. There are safe and fast withdrawals, and they are operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. So that means if you deposit $50, PrizePicks gives you another $50. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks gives you another $100. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up, one word with no space, LOCKEDON, for an instant deposit match of up to $100 using PrizePicks. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Monday, talking about a Jets victory, 16-9 over the Denver Broncos. Jets improved their record to 5-2. A little negative last segment because we had to talk about some of the key injuries the Jets suffered. In the NFL, part of having success is just getting lucky with injuries. And the Jets have had some bad luck on the offensive line this year. They had some bad luck with Zach Wilson in preseason. But overall, I think the Jets have been more lucky than unlucky to this point in the year. You hope that doesn't change. But one thing that has changed for the Jets is the play of this defense. We saw that unit last year. It was a catastrophe. I mean, how many times did we watch the Jets go out there and just get smoked by other teams' offenses? And even early this season, that first game against Baltimore, I think most of us came away from that game feeling pretty positive, but they gave up a bunch of long touchdowns. They had a disaster week 2 against Cleveland, where they just could not stop a Jacoby Brissett quarterbacked Browns team. Week 3, the Bengals, kind of did what they wanted, especially that long drive in the fourth quarter that iced the game. And ever since then, this Jets defense is playing lights out, and they're starting to rise in the NFL rankings on defense statistically. And listen, part of the story is they're not playing very good quarterbacks, but they're taking advantage of it. Sauce Gardner, what more can you say about him? He's a rookie who's playing like a veteran. He's playing like a seasoned veteran. I was going back and forth on whether I'd use this comparison because I don't want to put Sauce Gardner into his category yet, but I would say at a comparable point of his career, Sauce Gardner's playing better than Darrelle Revis did his first half of his rookie season. Revis was up and down, and I think Revis kind of figured it out the second half of 2007, but Sauce Gardner's playing at a higher level out of the gate. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to be as good as Revis in the long run, but I think it's worth noting. And on the other side, DJ Reed got beaten a couple times, but he's holding up well. And DJ Reed's a smaller guy, but he was able to take a ball away from Cortland Sutton in this game. And Jets have 3 good corners because Michael Carter II's playing excellent football in the slot. And then the defensive line, it was actually kind of a shaky performance by the defensive line in the first half. You could argue maybe even through the first 3 quarters. And that was part of the reason the Broncos were able to sustain drives. With Brett Rippon in there, without Javonte Williams, this is not a Denver offense that's going to produce a lot of big plays. But they were able to sustain drives. And part of it's the defensive line was losing, but the defensive line really heated up in the second half, especially the fourth quarter. It began late third quarter when Quinn and Williams got that pressure that forced the errant throw. And when the game was on the line, they did their jobs. And I think part of the credit has to go to the Jets coaching staff. I know a lot's been made about their rotating guys in and out during earlier games this season. Listen, this was a game the Jets had to rotate guys in and out. First of all, because you're in Denver in the thin air, players not acclimated to the climate, but also because the Broncos had the ball for so long in the first half that the Jets just would have been exhausted by the end of the game. And the coaching staff, they were smart. They activated extra defensive linemen. They made sure that those guys were fresh. Even though Quinn Williams was on the bench the last drive, which I wasn't sure about, but made sure those guys were fresh. And the Jets played their best defense in this fourth quarter of this game, and that's really what you want. So, excellent defensive performance by the Jets. I think the linebackers are, last couple of weeks, the linebackers have been pretty good. There was one bad angle Jordan Whitehead took on the play, but other than that, and I mean, Jordan Whitehead, he dropped a pick or two, but LaMarcus Joyner made that pick. I mean, the positions that, I guess the way I'd put it is the positions that were destroying the Jets early in the season, linebacker and safety, they may not be great right now, but they're not destroying the Jets anymore. And they're getting great play out of their corners. And they're getting, this wasn't the defensive line's best game, but it's clearly a strength on this team. And this unit it feels like they're just getting better and better as the season rolls along. Now, there will be tougher games ahead. You got New England this week. You got Buffalo the week after that. Those will be bigger tests for this defense. But this defense is playing with confidence. And I feel like if these guys had played, if these guys were playing Cleveland right now, I think the result of that would be very different. Even if they were playing Cincinnati right now, it's just a different Jets defense, and it feels like a different Jets team. And sometimes in the NFL, it's about confidence as much as anything. You get on a little bit of a roll. And sometimes there's fortune that comes into it. You're playing a bunch of backup quarterbacks. Sometimes you just have a couple a couple fourth quarter comeback wins where you get a few breaks, and then you start feeling really good. And your team just plays better as a result, and you just get on a little bit of a roll, and that thing just kind of perpetuates itself. And we've seen it could work the other way too, where you lose a heartbreaking game and it kind of destroys your season. We've seen that plenty through the years. Now we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing the Jets play with confidence. We're seeing the pieces start to come together, guys believing that they're going to come through in the big spot. And it produced a fourth straight victory yesterday for the Jets. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening. You'll receive notifications as new episodes are posted, so you'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source, please give the show a 5-star review. It helps the channel out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Watching on YouTube, please give the episode a big thumbs up. Same thing, helps the channel out, helps other Jets fans find the show. Have a great Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.